Hi there, and welcome into the lesson called How to Use Tactics in Your Games. I've highlighted the word your for a reason. A lot of chess players seem to be aware of the tactical motifs, still they have a hard time applying that knowledge into their own games. I'm pretty sure that you know what a fork or a pain or the other typical tactical motifs are. Most likely you have spent quite a considerable amount of time on solving tactical puzzles. Perhaps you've done it quite successfully. Most likely you can find proper moves in a lot of different tactical exercises. However, there is the most important question we need to think about and we need to ask ourselves. How often do you use those brilliant combinations into your own games? How often can you sacrifice a piece and deliver a nice mate to your opponent's king? For most of the players, the answer will be really very seldom, or maybe even almost never. And that's why during today's lesson I'm gonna show you how to change that for the better, how to bring out the chess tactical master in you, and how to help you use all that knowledge into your own games. I'm Igor Smirnov from Remote Chess Academy. I will be using my own games to illustrate those practical hints that I'm gonna share with you. That's why I am 100% sure that these techniques do work well. I use them in my own games, and a lot of my students have been using these techniques successfully. At the end of this lesson you will also know those powerful methods to start using tactical shots into your games regularly. Moreover, for this lesson I have selected my Blitz games solely. Most of them were played with 3 minutes per game time control, and there were also some bullet games with just 1 minute per the whole game. What I mean to say here is that using the methods that I will be discussing with you during this lesson, you can not only find tactical shots, but you can do it really quickly, just within several seconds. And before we get started, let's start from one common stereotype shared by most of the chess players out there. They think that all you can do and all you need to do in order to improve your tactical skills is to solve tactical puzzles. The question is it true or not? Let's have a look. This position happened in a recent game between Caruana and Nakamura. It is white to move. Here white has a little tactics that can bring him an instant winning. You can try to spend a few seconds to think about it. Perhaps you were able to see the move is rook takes g6, and after rook takes, white simply pushes his e-pawn forward. Black's pieces are awkwardly placed, they have almost no available squares, therefore white's pawn simply gets promoted and black will have to give up his rook for it. This is quite an elementary combination. There is basically nothing to calculate here, and the beginning idea is also pretty straightforward. White has a passed pawn, white wants to utilize it somehow. I'm pretty sure that most of players would solve this tactical puzzle without any problems. The funniest thing here is that Caruana did not play the move rook takes g6. Instead he played bishop f2, and later on the game ended in a draw. Now let's think about that for a moment. What if you show this position to Caruana as a tactical puzzle and ask him, okay, this is the puzzle, you need to find the winning for white. How do you think, would he be able to find the right solution? 200% yes. Again, this is a beginner level tactics. There is nothing to calculate here. Even at the beginning position there are no so many possible moves for white to play. He would definitely solve it. Then we faced another question. then why couldn't he find the right move during the game? He had around 20 minutes to think here. Now that's plenty of time for such a short variation. Now the reason is not the time factor. He missed the move rook takes g6 simply because during the chess game you normally try not to lose material, you make normal moves, and that's what he did. He played the normal move bishop to f2. For the past 40 moves he played those normal moves, which just keep building his position, keep improving it gradually. And now all of a sudden, at the 40th move of the game, he needs to give up the material, he needs to think differently. That's the problem for people, and that's why we miss those combinations. When you look at the tactical puzzle, you know that you need to sacrifice something there. You start looking for it and you can't find it. During the real game, nobody really tells you that now it's time for a combination, now you need to sacrifice something. Another thing, when you solve tactical puzzles, you know that combination does work well. Otherwise it would not be a tactical puzzle, right? During the game you have doubts. And you start thinking, okay, what if I sacrifice? Can I really make it successful or not? You know that if it's not successful, you're going to lose a game because you gave up material. You start having doubts, you start calculating variations, and if you're not totally sure, perhaps you will not go for that sacrifice. All I mean to say here is that the way of thinking that you use while playing the game and while solving tactical puzzles is very much different. That's why solving tactical puzzles does not guarantee at all that you will spot tactical shots during real games. This is helpful, that's true, but it's definitely not the only thing you need to do in order to improve your tactical vision and your ability to build combinations in your games and to find them in a real game. Now when we're finished with that, let's come to the real meat of this lesson and exactly how you can improve your situation here. How can you start finding brilliant combinations into your games regularly? Here's my game. I've been playing white. I don't know who's the black player. He played under a nickname, but it doesn't matter. It is white to move now, and please think about the position. What would you play here as white? The situation seems to be pretty complex. There are a couple of things white can do. The white's knight being attacked. The white's central situation seems to be quite advanced. He can do something there. Maybe just retreat with the knight or try to counterattack. There are a couple of possibilities. It seems really complex, and it seems like it requires a lot of calculation. That's the standard way of thinking. That's how most players would approach this position. I want to suggest you another way, which is much easier and much more effective. Instead of looking at your position and considering various options you may have here, you need to focus your attention into opponent's half of the board. If you can move there, this will cause the greatest effect, and it will damage opponent's position, it will improve your activity significantly. That's why most of all you want to go there. Now let's look at this position from this perspective. You want to go deeply inside of the opponent's position. With that being said, there are not so many options you may have here. The most advanced moves you can play are pawn takes c6 and pawn to f6. Or maybe you can also consider knight takes d5 for a second. You see, now it's getting a lot easier. Now you have only 3 moves to consider. Well, 2 most advanced moves are f takes c6 or pawn to f6. If you really trade pawns there onto e6, you will take and the opponent will recapture, nothing really happens. The move f6 is more interesting. If you play it and black tries to accept this little pawn sacrifice, he really has to do that because his queen being attacked. So if black tries to go into that line, then you can see that now you have much better option for your c3 knight. Rather than retreating backward, you can take knight takes d5, advancing the knight to a very active position and opening all the lines against opponent's king. Seems like white should be winning here pretty soon. Black's position is completely destroyed already. That's why I really played f6 move in the game. In the actual game, black played a very passive move, queen to f8, but it's totally bad for black. Now he's absolutely passive. All his pieces are on the last rank, so here white can do, I think, almost whatever. He will be completely dominating and winning in any case. Nevertheless, let's try to use the same approach. If you focus onto black's half of the board and think what you can do there, how you can advance your pieces there or make some damage, then also not so many things you can do. You can take there, you can take maybe knight takes d5. There is also another move which I played, it's knight to f5. Another interesting idea, it aims at the g7 pawn, the d6 square, and if black takes the knight, then after knight takes d5, it really creates numerous threats. Knight to c7 fork, or white can take on g7 and then bring this knight to f6 with check. Even we can go knight to e7 and lock the black's pieces there completely. All in all, black resigned in a few moves, and thanks to this way of thinking, white was able to win the game really easily. And you see that initial position, which initially seemed very complex, very hard to analyze, in reality turned out to be very simple. White has just a few possible moves forward, and many of them are very good. Here is the key takeaway for you. You need to focus onto opponent's territory. Your moves there will increase your activity significantly, they will bring maximum damage to your opponent. That's why if you really focus your attention there, you will definitely find a lot of powerful possibilities. You may be wondering why all players don't follow this method. If it is so easy and effective, then why not follow it? The answer is very easy. Being a chess coach, I can explain it without any problems. The answer comes from your childhood. You need to remember the moment when you were taught to play chess at the very beginning of this process. Most likely it happened somehow like that a coach was showing you the moves and explaining you how the pieces are moving. Let's say in this position white can play e4, black plays e5, and then, for example, a coach is telling you, look at the bishop. Oops, yeah, here's the bishop. It can go cross diagonals. It goes like that, for example. And now this is a task for you. Please take your bishop and move it somewhere. This is the way approximately how you have been taught to play chess. You practice that way initially, and later on, even when you grew up and became a decent player, later on you still keep the same habit of thinking. You follow it automatically, naturally. You look at the pieces that you have, and then you think where you should place them. Now you know that it's not the most effective way. This is the effective way to learn how the pieces are moving, but when it comes to practical game, it's definitely not the best way. Even if we talk about this particular position, which is of course just the beginning of the game, but even here, if you focus your attention on opponent's half of the board and think how you can attack it, you will come to the move knight f3, which is the best here, because you're attacking the pawn onto e5. So even in this elementary position, this idea still works, the idea of focusing onto opponent's territory and thinking what he can do there. Now let's apply the same method into some other positions. Here it's still white to play. Please focus your attention onto opponent's half of the board and then think how you can advance there and make some damage for your opponent. Actually, there are not so many options. Well, white can, of course, sacrifice his rook, somehow take the pawn, but it doesn't lead to anything. White can move the rook to f6, attacking the pawn on the f7, and it definitely makes sense. The other moves white can play are advance the knight to either e5 or g5, attacking that pawn onto f7, threatening fork. Actually, all these moves are very good. In the actual game I played knight to e5, which brings an immediate winning for white. Now although black can capture the bishop here, but white is gonna take the pawn on the f7 and after that to win the rook in the corner. In addition to that, all the black's pawns are very weak, they are hanging, and black's position is hopeless. That's why I won that game pretty easily. You see that if you follow the right way of thinking, you can easily find problem moves. Let's take a look at another example. This is my another Blitz game. I'm still playing white, and this time I know my opponent. It's GM Hansen. He was champion of Denmark a couple of times. And now we have a more complex position. This time there is no easy way for white to start an attack. Even if you focus your attention on the opponent's half of the board and think what you can do there, well, there is pretty much nothing. We can capture the pawn onto b5, but it doesn't really give much to white, because at least black can recapture the pawn onto e4, and in any case it's gonna be dangerous for white to move the queen there. Other than that, black control all the other squares into his territory. There is no tactical short white can do. The question is, what should you do in that case? Well, if you can't advance to your opponent's territory right now, you just need to prepare it. You need to think how you can move your pieces there, so that later on you can have some tactical ideas. Still, the same idea is applicable perfectly. Only when you invade into opponent's territory, you will then be able to consider some tactical ideas. Before that, most likely there will be nothing. That's why here in this position I played knight to h4, aiming at the f5 square, invading into opponent's territory. Black played g6, covering that square, and after that I've made a little sacrifice with knight takes g6. Black can't recapture with a pawn because of the pin. That's why knight takes g6 is forced, and then I played knight to f5, finally delivering the knight into that square. Now you can see that the situation became much more interesting for white. White is threatening knight takes h6, then aiming at the f7 pawn, white can take on d6 with a knight, maybe with a rook, and after that the rook will also attack across the 6th rank as well. You see that after you invaded into opponent's territory, you will have numerous tactical possibilities. That's why, in order to build the position where you can potentially find some tactical ideas, initially you still should focus your attention on the opponent's half of the board and think how to bring your pieces there. By the way, into this position, I'm not trying to prove that this sacrifice is totally correct for white. Perhaps a computer could hold a position, but in a practical game for a player it's really tough when you have to face a lot of different attacking possibilities from the side of your opponent. In the game, black played king to h7, knight took on to d6, attacking the f6 knight, and then black made a fatal mistake, he took on to e4. It seems good, but it enables queen h5 move, which wins the game on the spot. Now white is going to play queen takes h6 and queen g7 mate. There is no defense for black, so black just resigned. I've showed you this game just to illustrate that of course not always you really can invade into opponent's territory and deliver the tactical shot straight away. In the situations when there is no such an opportunity, you just need to improve your position and still focus on the opponent's territory and think how you can invade there, how you can bring your pieces there, closer to the opponent's position. This is another game. This time we'll be playing black. Let me ask you the same question. Can you find any tactical possibilities for black? Of course, I want that you use the same way of thinking. You need to focus your attention onto opponent's half of the board and then think to yourself, what can you do there? Can you advance your forces there somehow, or can you put some damage for the opponent straight away? While looking at the white's position, you can see that all the squares are pretty much covered. you can't grab anything immediately. In those cases, you still need to focus your attention onto the opponent's half of the board and think how you can bring your pieces there, how you can invade into opponent's territory. There are not so many things black can do here. Just one of them is to advance the knight, knight h5. Later on it can go to g3, maybe to f4 after some preparation. That's why I played that move. In reply, white found an interesting tactical idea. He took knight takes c6 and then bishop takes c5. Actually, that's quite a well-known tactical motif. White uses the pin against black's queen. Anyway, let's keep focusing on black's moves and what can you do here. If you look at the white's position and possible ways for you to do something there, then a few moves that comes to mind is either to advance the knight there, attacking something, maybe queen to g5, strengthening the ideas of knight f4 or bishop to h3. These are the moves that black has here. All of them are quite interesting. In the game I played queen to g5, bringing one more piece into the attack, and also unpinning the pawn onto d6. Therefore, the bishop is now under attack. You see that now when you have some pieces not even invaded into opponent's territory, but at least looking at the opponent's territory, then already you have a number of tactical possibilities. Bishop takes h3, knight to f4, knight to g3, and so forth. It's already not that easy for white to find reasonable defense. In the game he played bishop takes d6, because the bishop is hanging. It fails to another tactics. After rook takes d6, black has queen c5 with a double attack, winning the rook. But actually I want to highlight that even without queen to c5 check, even if black takes into h3 or just plays knight f4, there will be a couple of tactical possibilities for black on the next moves. You see, when you have pieces invaded into opponent's territory, it usually creates a lot of ideas for you that can be utilized later on. That's why I'm telling that if you can't do something significant into the opponent's half of the board straight away, then just try to invade into that territory. You will get the chance to do something significant later on. Now let's draw some intermediate conclusions. We've been talking about bringing tactics into your games, making you a powerful tactical player who can use those ideas regularly into your practical games. Then we've discussed that just solving tactical puzzles is not enough. That's what everybody is doing, and it doesn't quite give the results you want. Instead, I gave you another idea which is very powerful and very practical. This is to shift your approach. Instead of doing what everybody's doing, instead of looking at your pieces and thinking where they should move, you need to switch your approach. You shift the focus from your territory into opponent's territory, and you think to yourself, how can you move there? How can you invade into opponent's territory, into his half of the board? While making that invasion, you can either inflict some damage straight away. If that is possible, great. If it's impossible, then just think how to advance your forces into the opponent's territory. It will enable numerous tactical possibilities later on. Now I want that you train this in some games. If I just give you a couple of advices and you rush through them, it will be hard for you to adopt them into your games. That's why it will be better if we do it, by little pieces of advices, and you will take time to train it. That's why I want that you keep this idea in mind and play some games or solve some tactical puzzles and try to train this new approach for the game. Alright? If you do that, it'll definitely help you. And in the second part of this video, I will show to you some other powerful techniques. Actually, there are just a lot of base ideas you need to know, and then it will already bring quite significant advancement for you. That's why in the next time I will show you the next piece of advice to strengthen your tactical vision even further. Until that time, I hope you will train these ideas. In addition to that, I have prepared another little bonus for you. Actually, that's a special day for me today. It is my birthday. That's why I just wanted everybody to feel happy about that. And I've prepared some bonuses. You can follow the link below the video. There you'll find a more detailed description. So I hope it will help you have fun as much as I have it today. Thank you for watching the video. I strongly recommend that you train the ideas you've learned today. If you do that, you will definitely get benefited significantly, and we'll continue next time. Take care, goodbye.